What in the world is going on with the world's energy commodities? Why is there such an energy crunch? Like for gas, why are oil prices so high? And if there's such a shortage, why are countries like Iran and Venezuela, who have two of the world's largest oil and gas reserves, restricted by U.S. sanctions? Hi, I'm Kavital Wai. Those are some of the topics we'll be covering in this edition of the program. Coming up in today's program, the energy crunch from the west to the east, natural gas prices to have skyrocketed in Europe, especially the UK, pressuring manufacturers in the US, Europe, and yes, even China. Then let's look at the green energy transformation. Is the world ready for it? Transitioning from sources like coal to green energy? Is failing with coal actually making a comeback? The supply is falling short. Also in this program, we will be taking a look at Iran's proven oil and gas reserves, 137 billion barrels, 10% of the world's total. It can alleviate global fuel crisis, but wait, U.S. sanctions are preventing that. And such is the case with Venezuela. It's a worldwide energy crunch, and countries around the world are feeling the squeeze, like in the U.S.
It is actually. It's a really big problem because, gas prices like about $4 now. And if somebody makes about $10 an hour, it's a big problem for them to even fill up their gas tank because it's like $60, $65.
The United States is contributing to this shortage by not allowing a lot of fracking, by not allowing building of pipelines. So it restricts the supply. If you restrict the supply, prices will be going up. So the United States does its part. It's not the overall most important part.
Even China is feeling the shortage. Affected by various factors, many regions in China have seen tight supply of electricity since September. The situation is grim for the UK, which has been plagued by gas shortages and Brexit woes. Fears of inflation have gripped the US, causing investors in Europe to be cautious, especially since the energy crisis is driving up the price of oil.
Ich könnte mir vorstellen, dass der Staat sagt, die hohen Strom- und Gaspreise, Ölpreise, die decken wir zum Teil ab. Wir nehmen also die Spitze raus. Wer finanziert das am Ende? Natürlich die EZB, gemäß ihrem Motto, einer zahlt bestimmt.
Worldwide, citizens are mad, since they are suffering from high prices and inflation as a result of energy shortages and supply chain disruptions.
Vous touchez 600, il y a des personnes âgées qui touchent 600, 700 euros de retraite, des handicapés qui touchent 900 euros. Vous avez des mamans avec 2 enfants.
Il faut travailler aussi pour gagner 200 euros par jour. Moi, personnellement, je loue cette voiture que je paye 100 euros. Alors, dans les 100 euros qui restent, je dois manger, je dois mettre du carburant. Donc, ça veut dire que je fais une journée de travail pour gagner 50 euros.
This transformation to clean energy is also creating a crisis, since the volume of energy does not match the demand side, now that many economies are opening up after COVID.
Et je pense qu'il faut le faire en étant sûr que chaque année, on va produire moins de CO2, puisque c'est ça qu'il faut regarder. Or, malheureusement, la transition énergétique rêvée va se transformer en 2021 en un cauchemar climatique et en un cauchemar pour les résidentiels, les industriels en Europe.
With energy prices of the US skyrocketing, shortage of energy in Europe, and China experiencing a shortage as well, the world economic recovery remains in doubt. Unless countries like Iran and Venezuela enter the market and provide the much-needed oil and gas. But U.S. sanctions are preventing that from happening. Once again, U.S. sanctions are affecting citizens of countries worldwide, including its own citizens.
It's crazy because for me, it takes to fill up my car like $60 every week. Before, it used to be $40.
One of the things that the world energy crunch can do is to derail the world economic recovery. Now, naturally, when the economy picks up, there will be more demand for energy. World oil prices can rise, which it has. It can boost oil demand by 500,000 barrels per day, and it could stoke inflation, which, again, it has in commodities like food.
A warning Thursday from the International Energy Agency. The energy watchdog warns a global energy crunch is likely to boost global oil demand by 500,000 barrels per day, and that's enough to stoke inflation and slow the economic recovery.
Well, the IMF has cut its global growth forecast, with one of the reasons being the world energy shortage.
The global recovery continues, but the momentum has weakened, hobbled by the pandemic. Overall, risks to economic prospects have increased, and policy trade-offs have become more complex. Now, compared to our July forecast, the global growth projection for this year has been revised down marginally to 5.9% and is unchanged for 2022 at 4.9%.
Well, joining us for this edition of the Q&A is Joe Quinn. He's the lead editor and researcher at SOT.net. He has written articles like his most recent one, Newsreel, Zero Carbon, Zero COVID, the reckless and extremist ideologies at the heart of the governments. All right, Joe, welcome. The world is facing an energy crunch as the supply of natural gas and coal and other energy sources have failed to adequately satisfy demand. Natural gas prices have risen multifold, as you're aware, while several factories in China even have shut down due to power disruptions. What exactly is going on here?
Well, the first thing that's that's mentioned quite often is the pandemic, and what governments have done over the past 18 months. Governments around the world have done over the past 18 months in response to the pandemic, which was to shut down large sections of society, and as a result, reduce demand for many products, and they were essentially interfered with the global supply chain of many different products, including energy.
This is our in-depth section, which means it's time to take a deep look at the energy crisis, the big energy crunch. Well, in order to get an idea about the energy crisis, we need to take a look at what types of energy commodities there are in the first place. Well, there you have it. This is a good way of looking at it. We try to cover all of them. You got things like wind and solar, coal, oil, nuclear, hydro, bioenergy, pumped storage, gas and interconnectors, and of course, since we didn't have much room, we put it under other fuels. Well, let's take all of these energy commodities and then get a sense of how much each of them are being used across the world. And this graph is going to give you an idea, because what we did was we took it and we looked at the average median, if you will, to get an idea of its usage overall. So as you can see over here, as this is being formed, the one in orange is gas, which is the most widely used form of usage. You got nuclear and then coal, which come in second and third place, respectively. In terms of coal, that's the one in the black that you see in the bottom here. Now, let's take a look in particular at wind and solar, because there's so much talk about fighting climate change. And of course, that's green energy. You could see that the usage really peaks right around this area over here. Now, that's quite a lot for wind and solar, if you think about it. Although its usage is at the bottom, renewable now provide actually a third of power generation. However, that's still not enough to provide all the energy needs at this time when the global economy is bouncing back from the COVID-19 pandemic. The shortage that is being experienced now is set to be a short-term squeeze, if you want to call it maybe a jolt. After colder than normal winter depleted natural gas inventories, gas and electricity prices soared, as you can see over here. This is actually outlining it. However, this actually is showing what has resulted as a result of gas and energy usage overall, which basically you're looking at inflation. Inflation is soaring across what we use as a barometer were the G7 economies. So you can see the effect that it has there. And that brings us to China. Now, China, believe it or not, has had an energy shortage as a result of all of this, and this graph shows it incrementally. It's going to go, as you can see, pointing to that. The industrial economy still relies heavily on fossil fuels, and of course that naturally means coal, gas, and oil. The country simply does not have enough fuel. Why? Because it was trying to transition to cleaner energy to help with the climate crisis. Here is China's power usage, as you can see, showing what I just talked about, which basically means it needs coal as an example. Now, Chinese manufacturing is something that has happened that is very unusual because of the transition that it was trying to make. It actually contracted in September for the first time. That occurred for the first time in 19 months. And guess what happens when China needs gas, oil, and coal? Well, it's going to hoard up all the energy as much as it can, which, as a result, will affect the rest of the world, like it has done in Europe, because there are tighter energy supplies as a result. And in particular, it has affected the UK. So you can see the effect that China has on the world when it's trying to keep up with the demand that is coming through so that it could have its production ramped up. This is our new section where we will look at social media posts, web entries, viewer comments, and the like, and discuss this with our guests. We hope to have your input so we can feature your comments in our future episodes. Okay, let's get started. When it comes to the world energy shortages, there is a lot at stake for every country. Let's face it, fuel, energy, it all starts from there when it comes to production and everything else, really. But are there politics at play here? Well, let's look at China. In line with transitioning to green energy and fulfilling green commitments, China announced in September 21 that it will stop building coal-burning power plants abroad. That marked a major shift for a country that is heavily reliant on coal. This entry reveals just that. China pledges to stop building coal-burning power plants abroad in a major shift for one of the biggest backers of coal-fired plants globally. Still, China remains heavily reliant on new coal plants at home and is the world's top emitter of greenhouse gas emissions. Well, that was on September 21. Then came October 13. In less than a month, a 360-degree turn. China announces a power problem and said that there is a national rush, that is, to mine and to burn more coal, as the country's electricity shortage threatens to damage its image as a reliable manufacturing base. Okay, so there you have it. Well, let's find out from our guest and see what he thinks. We turn to Joe Quinn. Joe, it seems like China and many like it cannot move away from coal.
In terms of China, China, there's talk in China of moving again away from. I mean, China produces about 50% of its energy supply from coal, and of course the greening of the economy, etc. In the face of climate change requires countries to move away from burning fossil fuels like coal, but there's simply no way that China is going to move away from, to any great extent, move away from the burning of coal and oil and gas.
Okay, well, Joe doesn't think that. Well, when we take a look at the reaction from a viewer out there, Fred Jacobs is the one that we picked, a 57-year-old software marketer who lives in Seattle, Washington in the U.S., who wrote, ordered 2 high-performance solid-state drives in late summer from China, only to be offered a refund a week ago because of a lack of electricity, which would cause factory delays. Now, doesn't this sound exactly like what the U.S. is actually wishing for? Anything to hurt China's economy? It looks like this was a Christmas gift that came early for the White House. Well, Fred further added, I was flabbergasted because I have heard about shipping issues with China, but not power issues or infrastructure issues with Chinese suppliers. Now the risk is much higher and I will buy from U.S. vendors, even if I have to pay more. Okay, let's turn to oil now. Prices of oil have skyrocketed. This tweet states that the global energy crisis sends crude oil prices to the highest levels since late 2018. Which is around $85 a barrel based on this entry. This shows how the green push is being defeated. Now, there's a viewer by the name of Pisk who has stated in his tweet, as more renewable energy enters the markets and it closes nuclear power, more gas and fuel needs to be burned as the power generated from renewable is marginal. But there are many comments that go actually beyond mainstream news, like this one that came from DMAC. And he wrote, we're assuming that it's a he, that this so-called shortage was planned to manipulate our economy and increase the rate of inflation, that it's a continuation of the last time that Obama and Joe were in office. Just remember the prices the last time around and look at the current gas and power price to have increased. Okay, let's find out what Paolo thinks. Paolo Raffona, what can you say about the global shortage? Any government interference, or should I say manipulation that's going on here?
In terms of
well, the energy crunch is something that could have been foreseen before the COVID, and of course the COVID has increased the possibility that this would have happened, and it did in fact. That the entire system of the globalized supply of energy and goods, in fact, is very fragile. It's very fragile because it is extremely influenced by geopolitical confrontations and instability.
Okay, global agreements. Let's see if that's going to turn out to be the case. So geopolitical factors obviously impact the global energy crunch. By the way, the viewer comment that we mentioned before Paolo Raffona was speaking of, started speaking, which was about gas prices during the time Obama was president and his VP was Biden, to have hit peak prices. Do you think that was true? Well, let's do a flashback and a background check here. And here you have it. This is a snapshot to refresh your memory. The text added to the bottom of the photo reads, just a reminder of what things looked like the last time that Biden was in the White House. Okay, we would like it if you got engaged with us. You can write to us and tell us what you think about anything, especially about the program or topics that you want us to cover. Our links and addresses are here. We would love to hear from you. Now it's time to pass the torch to Mahdi so he can tell you more about the world energy crunch and a realistic solution to the matter, as you're about to find out.
Thank you, Kove. The energy crunch has taken the world by surprise, and it seems no country or continent will be immune to it. Take the oil prices. They've touched their highest in almost 7 years. As of the recording of this program, WTI crude oil was selling for a little over $82 per barrel. Natural gas prices were at record high as China was facing shortages coming on the back of global demand. Gas prices in the EU, which imports 90% of its gas, have skyrocketed almost 600% this year. Not that other commodities haven't. One main reason is that inventories at European storage facilities are at historically low levels for this time of year. The EU has blamed Russia for using gas as a political tool, something drawing anger from the Russian President Vladimir Putin.
Из всего объема, выпадающих объемов поставок СПГ на европейский рынок, а выпадающий объем свыше 14 миллиардов кубических метров газа, ну, в пересчете на газ, СПГ я имею в виду, половина примерно недопоставлена операторами США. Так кто использует вот эти энергетические инструменты в каких-то своих целях? Мы или кто-то другой? Мы увеличиваем, а партнеры из других стран, в том числе и США, уменьшают поставки в Европу.
With consumers facing a huge jump in winter fuel bills, energy prices have topped the European Union's political agenda. The EU has presented what it has called a toolbox, short and medium-term measures to help people and businesses get through the winter. These measures include emergency income support to households, state aid for companies, and targeted tax reductions. In one respect, there has been a push to prevent climate change, and this means stopping the use of coal or even nuclear power plants.
It is a serious issue. I think we have to be very clear that the gas prices are skyrocketing, and but the renewables, the prices have decreased over the last years and are stable.
Wir haben ein Dilemma. Auf der einen Seite Klimaschutz, alles abschalten, Kohlekraftwerke, Atomkraftwerke. Auf der anderen Seite mehr Strom, der benötigt wird für Digitalisierung. Und gerade Strom, die Stromkosten auch, das sind die Arbeitskosten der Zukunft. Denn ohne Strom keine Digitalisierung.
The situation for the UK is grim. If there are rising energy bills this winter, many more Brits can die of the cold, in what is known as fuel poverty. Just last year, it was reported that on average, there are 32,000 more deaths between December and March than the rest of the year. An average of 9,700 deaths each year are believed to be caused by living in a cold house.
Every winter, millions of people struggle to heat their homes, and the rising cost of energy just increases the misery.
China, meanwhile, has also been hit by the low energy supplies as it tries to ensure there is enough energy supply across the country this winter and next spring. Many regions in China have seen tight supply of electricity since September. By some accounts, China is in a state of emergency when it comes to oil and gas. So much so that China has ordered state-owned energy companies to do whatever it takes to secure fuel supplies. But China has not sat idle. For example, a chemical company in northwest China's Shaanxi province has pledged to develop the country's energy industry through a green and low-carbon path.
煤化工呢，现在大家普遍认为是属于两高项目，高耗能、高排放。这个转型呢，就是从这两个方面着手。
Energy shortages, astronomical gas prices, bottlenecks in supply chains. Is there a solution on the horizon? Not just a quick fix, which can address the problem? Sure there is. Iran oil minister has said that sanctions removal will help solve global energy crisis. He said the unprecedented surge in gas prices in Europe was driven by a fall in gas storage levels. All this is happening while Iran has been deprived of exporting its oil for many years. Europeans and Americans are now struggling with such an issue while their governments have long imposed illegal and cruel sanctions against our crude oil exports. Venezuela is another country sanctioned by the US that can fill the worldwide energy shortage. Venezuela has the largest proven oil reserves, and it ranks 8th in the world when it comes to natural gas reserves. So, it looks like the stage is set for an all-out scramble among Asia, Europe, the Middle East, and South America for shipments of LNG from exporters. And this is where countries like Iran and Venezuela can be a good fit for providing the much-needed oil and gas. So, what do you think? Shouldn't the EU and US lift their illegal sanctions? Iran can help their energy needs and the world for that matter. Because this problem is not going away anytime soon. Please write to us and let us know what you think. These are our links and addresses. It's goodbye until next week.
In my final thoughts, I would like to focus first on the supply chain. The supply chain damage could have been a lot less, or even eliminated, were it not for the COVID-19 vaccine greed from the rich countries, like from the G7 countries, who are still hoarding the vaccine, by the way. Many of the links are developing countries, like in Africa maybe or elsewhere, that still need vaccines. Then comes another very important point: the massive energy supplies that can be added to the world supply, but is being prevented from doing so. Why? Because of the US and its sanctions. And of course, I'm talking about Iran and also Venezuela, who have massive supplies of oil and gas. Imagine if their products were to be poured into the supplies of the world in terms of energy. Well, it doesn't seem like that's going to happen, because the US would rather have its people suffer, have its citizens suffer from inflation, for example, and yet not have oil come from these two countries due to political objectives that it has. That does for this edition of Economic Divide. Your questions and comments are always welcome. It was great to have you. Until next week, it's goodbye.